and let everybody in.
Dave, Steve, and Ron, you may want to change your names.
Somebody change Steve's name.
If you use the Zoom app, you can probably change it yourself. Cusa looks like he's running the Starship Enterprise.
Okay, we have 2 people in here that are just labeled QCSD School Board. Who are they?
I think it's Ron.
Okay, Ron's
Yeah,
one of them.
I'm looking for the thing to change my name.
I made a little video. I can send it to you.
It's different every time.
I just did it
For
for
the
him.
first time, I think Steven's not the last one to get his name changed.
I just changed my name. I was the second person.
Okay, now we're good.
And I can't get my video to work. What the hell?
So Ron, where's your background?
This is the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon today.
I thought so. You know,
Yeah,
that's my part of the world. Love
Dr.
it.
Harner swears he was right at this spot one day.
Well, I think
He
that looks like Moab on the Colorado River.
He knows exactly where this one was.
Jenny, where's your background? How come you're not in Holland anymore or wherever, Copenhagen?
Well, it's just my dining room. Sorry. Boring.
I think we're about, we have everyone trickled in. Do you agree, Joe?
Yeah, it seems to have stopped at this point. So
Okay.
Hey,
Bear with me just a moment. We'll get started. Thank you all to the public who have been patient with us. Prior to this meeting, we did have an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. So thank you for your patience. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you all for joining us virtually. We'll start with our flag salute. Joe, if you'd like to get that flag going for us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to do our roll call. And since this is Anita's last night with us, if you'd like to share just a little thought of gratitude for Anita, feel free to do so after your name is called during our roll call.
Mr. Reimers?
here. And Anita, thank you so much for everything. You've always been a help, and I thank you.
Mr. Spear?
Here, and thank you very much. We're gonna miss hearing your voice at every one of these meetings.
Mr. Klein?
Muted, sir.
I see his lips moving.
Yeah, I think his microphone broke. He looks unmuted.
Uh-oh. All right, we'll come back to you, sir.
Mr. Jackson?
Present. Happy to have Terry filling in from now on, but very, very sad to see Anita go. We loved her muchly.
Mr. Kern?
I am here, and good luck, Anita.
going to go back to Mr. Klein. Still not there. Mr. Micucci?
Yeah, I'm here. Anita, thanks for everything. You were great to work with. Best of luck.
Mr. Akmanowitz?
Present and grateful to have had you work with me all these years, your patience, and, you know, thank you so much.
Ms. Weed?
Anita, you rock. My interactions with you predate school board by many, many years because our daughters are good friends, but you're awesome, awesomely professional and awesome on a personal level as well. You'll be missed.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes, Anita, I am so happy for you. I'm really happy for you on your journey and your next step in your career. I think you're going to do a wonderful job. You will be missed here. I'll especially, like I said before, I'll miss you keeping me in line. So Terry, don't feel shy. You can
Okay.
feel free to keep me in line. I can't tell you how many times Anita has, made sure to remind me of things, and she's just so organized and just wonderful to work with. So we'll miss you, Anita. Good luck.
Thank you all so much. It was a pleasure serving for you.
All
Okay, and I
right,
just need to go back to Mr. Klein again.
if he can't,
Okay.
then just do he can't. So
Yep.
just do a thumbs up. All right.
He's going to do all his votes with thumbs up and thumbs down.
Oh, no.
He can, and technically he can sign, right? If he can ASL, we got to accept that.
We'll do
He
that,
should
right?
be able to chat as well, but maybe Joe can give him a call, or he could give Joe a call.
I can just say, Steve, if you want to just try to exit out of Zoom and come back in, that may work for you.
It's like the,
Turn it off and turn it back on again.
that's exactly what I was going to say. It seems
That's the
to
IT
work.
department right there.
That's right.
I
It typically
sometimes use a hammer.
works.
Yeah, just smack the side of the computer. You're all good.
All right, we're going to move on to the next item of the agenda, just to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded. We're going to go to the approval of the minutes. I'll need a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting from the October 22nd meeting.
So moved by Mr. Jackson.
I'll second it, John Kern.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, before we move on to our first public comment, out of respect of one of our presenters here, we have someone who is going to just give us a quick 10-minute presentation on the compressor station and how that could potentially impact our community, particular the elementary school that it happens to be super close to us. So that's going to be Dr. Ned Ketyer. And did we get Dr. Ketyer a panelist link, Dave? Is he up there? He is. He's on the call with us.
He's in here. Yes. Yeah. Joe hooked him up. Thank you, Joe.
All right. And then I think you had some slides as well. Joe, would you mind, unless
he can just share a screen if he'd like, if he has them.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
You want a moment to get set up?
Sure. I would be remiss if I didn't wish Anita good luck.
Good luck, Anita.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, very good.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening. I'll be brief. I was invited to speak tonight because I understand a compressor station that moves natural gas through a pipeline is being considered for your area. And it appears that it's about a mile and a half from the elementary school. If you have, it sounds like you have some questions and concerns about the safety of students and residents. So I'm briefly going to go over what a compressor station does, what type of pollution it will generate, and how that pollution could threaten the health of children and adults living and learning in proximity. The Adelphia Quakertown compressor station is being proposed for this area with the elementary school at the center. According to local media reports, it's a 5,625 horsepower compressor station in an 8 to 10,000 square foot building at a 1.5 acre site on Rich Hill Road near the border of West Rock Hill and Richland. And my understanding is that's maybe in the east corner, right about there of this the southeast quadrant. I will note that this is not a sparsely populated area. In addition to dangerous air emissions, residents are going to have to put up with constant noise and vibrations once the compressor station is operational. Weather factors such as cloud cover, wind direction, and wind speed will help determine how much of the air pollution reaches students, teachers, and staff at the school. Even though industry will promise to be good neighbors, it's up to local governments and concerned citizens to ensure that public health is adequately protected when permits for new infrastructure like compressor stations are considered. Health impact assessment tools help communities learn about the public health impacts of different types of shale gas infrastructure and can assist in setting protective policies in place. HIAs are designed to give residents, local decision makers, and public officials enough information to determine whether or not it's safe to allow infrastructure like compressor stations to operate in the community. We want to know what equipment will be on the site, whether it's going to be there temporarily or permanently, who lives and works, learns and plays near the site, what the emissions are and what can we expect from the operations on the site, and what are the potential health effects of being exposed to those emissions. Only after community leaders and residents have their questions answered and their concerns addressed should any consideration be given for siting any heavy industrial activity, including shale gas pipelines and compressor stations. The biggest concerns about living near compressor stations center around air quality and water quality, noise and light pollution, stress, soil contamination, and emergency preparedness of local police and fire departments. You don't have natural gas well pads in Quakertown like we do in Southwest Pennsylvania. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Ned Katire. I'm a retired pediatrician. I live in Washington County, which is the most heavily fracked county in Pennsylvania. I'm a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Environmental Health. I'm a consultant for Southwest Pennsylvania Environmental Health Project and a board member of Physicians for Social Responsibility. So I should have said that first. So no well pads where you are, thank goodness, but you do have pipelines coursing through rural communities and suburban backyards. Pipelines can leak and spill and corrode and explode, leading to destroyed property and loss of life. And if you have pipelines, then you also have pig launchers and compressor stations. Pig launchers are where the pipelines are exposed and pipeline maintenance takes place. Pipelines need to be periodically cleaned out of gunk and scale, some of which is radioactive and all of which is contaminated with chemicals and gases. Maintenance work at pigging stations requires launching large volumes of chemicals and gases into the atmosphere. People living near this activity have reported significant health symptoms, respiratory symptoms, nosebleeds, rashes, headaches, and more. There is a pigging station adjacent to the Adelphia Quakertown compressor station that is included in the DEP's plan approval. And you can find that plan approval online. Compressor stations generate pressure to keep gas moving through the natural gas pipelines. They are situated about 40 to 70 miles along pipeline routes. The incoming gas is cleaned and compressed before it is sent on to the next section of the pipeline. Natural gas from the pipeline is used to run the engines in the compressor station. Compressor stations are required to vent gas into the atmosphere and depressurize the pipeline system. These events are called blowdowns, and they are typically scheduled in advance. They can result in dangerous spikes in dangerous emissions. Whether during normal operation or during scheduled blowdowns, compressor stations emit enormous volumes of air contaminants. Pennsylvania has hundreds of compressor stations like this one in Butler County. Here's another Butler County compressor station, and one more. Most compressor engines are powered by burning natural gas. The Quakertown station will have at least 3 of these engines operating in the building. When operational, 3 large engines will produce significant amounts of noise and pollution. So where do the emissions from a compressor station come from? From burning natural gas to fuel the engines that compress the gas, from unintentional leaking and venting into the atmosphere. Compressor stations are pretty leaky. Small amounts of emissions come from metering equipment in the building, and scheduled blowdown events emit huge volumes of air contaminants. Unscheduled emergency blowdown situations can occur in the event of a sudden pipeline disruption, like a fire or an explosion, where the pipeline has to be decompressed and emptied. So what kind of pollution does a compressor station generate? This 2017 report from the State University of New York, looking at dozens of compressor stations in New York State, showed that every compressor station routinely releases large volumes of chemicals associated with a variety of diseases and disorders. Here are the top 5 chemical emissions from compressor stations, though other hazardous air pollutants are also released. It's important to note that nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds combine in the presence of heat and sunlight to form ground level ozone, which negatively affects every person's lung function. Ozone is a major air pollutant associated with serious lung problems in children and adults. On days when ozone levels are high, like when you have air quality alerts in the orange or the red range, those days are bad for kids with asthma and adults with COPD and heart disease. Carbon monoxide is toxic to every human who breathes it, leading to neurologic symptoms and even death. VOCs, or volatile organic compounds like benzene, are known to cause cancer in children and adults. Toluene is another VOC that can cause permanent neurologic damage in humans. Formaldehyde is a toxic chemical that is also a carcinogen. Particulate matter is responsible for a number of cradle-to-grave health problems that we'll review in a couple of minutes. But not listed here, but also released in large quantities, is methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas responsible for climate change, which endangers everyone's health and well-being. Finally, it should be noted that all of these chemical emissions are invisible. And I want to show you this quick video because it's important and it's really pretty dramatic. My colleague Leanne Leiter at Earthworks loaned me this video to show you how looks can be deceiving. This is a compressor station in Washington County. It looks like maybe the size of the one that's going to go in near you. This is in the middle of the afternoon. Everything looks clean and quiet. You see the rust on the stacks. That's not very nice. But there's no steam. There's no smoke that you can see. Now, this is an optical camera. It's a FLIR camera. It's a digital camera. It's in the middle of the day. You can see the timestamp says 3:17. And this is the pollution that you can't see with the naked eye. This compressor station is operating. And with this expensive infrared FLIR camera, you can see what our eyes can't. Large volumes of volatile organic compounds and hydrocarbons coming out of the building. In fact, compressor stations emit enormous quantities of air pollution, and these emissions are real. Again, you can't see it with the naked eye, and you can see how they travel. They're traveling over the treetops, and they're going quite a distance. And if you go on Earthworks' website, you'll see many different fracked gas sites with this type of pollution. And they're certainly most serious at compressor stations. So exposure to toxic gases and chemicals can be continuous during normal operations and sporadic in case of blowdowns. Exposure to toxic chemicals can occur over the short term, over minutes and hours and days, and can lead to acute health symptoms that can be mild, like throat and eye irritation, coughing, rashes, headaches, and nausea. and also can lead to extreme things like asthma attacks in children or breathing problems in an adult with COPD, for example. Long-term exposure over many months and years can lead to chronic health effects like chronic lung disease, heart disease, neurologic impairment, and cancer. In fact, there's a long list of well-known health impacts that result from exposure to air pollution, especially PM 2.5 and ozone. Complications of pregnancy, including prematurity, low birth weight, and small for gestational age newborns. And they all have lifelong ramifications. Birth defects, developmental delays, learning problems, ADHD, even autism have all been linked to prenatal exposure to air pollution. These also have lifelong consequences for individuals and for society. Childhood asthma is more common and more severe in communities with high levels of air pollution. Chronic lung diseases in adults are worse. People who have chronic heart disease are at risk on days when air quality is poor. Obesity and type 2 diabetes are both linked to chronic exposure to air pollution. Neurologic impairment and dementia are recently linked in recent studies to air pollution. Cancer is associated with air contaminants in children and adults. PM 2.5 is known to cause lung cancer and bladder cancer and is thought to contribute to other types of cancer in adults. Air pollution is a known risk factor for mental illness. Any person who witnesses environmental degradation and destruction will have an impact on their mental health, and that's especially true in children. And finally, more than 4 million people die prematurely every year as a result of their exposure to outdoor air pollution, and that includes tens of thousands of Americans. So I'm just going to stop here. Thank you for your attention. I want to remind everybody that we have a constitutional right in Pennsylvania to clean air, pure water, and the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment, not just for the students attending elementary school in Quakertown, but for all people, including generations yet to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. I am really appreciative that you could jump on and give us a little bit of background on the quality of health. We had been talking about it for a while now as a board. I'm sorry I didn't give many of the other board members much notice. I'll take and own that. Does anybody have any questions by any chance? Quickly, I don't know, Kaylin, it's your meeting and I'm just going to step back now. I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, quick questions. And I mean, I guess the biggest thing for me, and I asked Dave this previously when we decided to add this to the agenda, is what can we do as a school board? Is there something that we can do? And being aware of this is very important, but is there something at this point that we can do to advocate for our kids?
Well, I think it's important to get informed. I think everyone in the community should get informed, and hopefully this talk was helpful. I think that getting in touch with elected officials, locally especially, is important. If the people who are going to approve this or not approve this, and it sounds like this is going to be a go, they hopefully have considered all of this. They've done a health impact assessment in your community, and that should be available for the public to look at. Hopefully they've asked the right questions from the public and from community members, and they've taken into account the potential health threats, particularly to children, but to everybody who's living there. And hopefully they've zoomed out a little bit and looked at the wider picture, which is what this means to the rest of the state. If this compressor station goes through, that's going to have a lot of upstream impact to folks like me in Western Pennsylvania, where we're doing all the fracking. It just increases the demand, it increases the fracking, increases the pollution here, which is considerable and is causing considerable harm to people. And that's been well documented by the Pennsylvania grand jury back in June, how people in Pennsylvania are being harmed.
Do you think it would be beneficial for the district to monitor the air quality on that property? On our school district property?
Well, I would hope that air quality measurements would be taken before the compressor station is put in and during operations. I would hope that the air quality would be continuously monitored with such a heavy industrial building going in the area. Like I said, it's not sparsely populated. There are a lot of people who are going to be facing a lot of noise and a lot of pollution and vibrations. It's just people living around there. So I think the whole community is at risk. It's up for your local government to do the right thing, to call in the health experts and the public health experts and the air quality experts and figure out how best to protect the community. And that's true with any industry that comes in.
Dave, that was what I was going to raise is if we as a board are concerned, we should, I think I've said this before, is monitor, right? Put monitoring on our school and we can see what it is now and we can see if there's any true problem because it's all in the dissipation. And I know when I used FLIR equipment on cruise missiles, it's infrared, right? It's not telling you what, it's just telling you heat. It's not telling you if they're VOCs or methane or how much of this or that. So trust but verify. And if we're concerned about it, we should verify by putting monitors on our property.
And I would say the FLIR camera is a heat signature, but the thing that's causing the heat is not air. It's volatile organic compounds and methane. It's not steam. It's not particulate matter. It's not air the way it moves. It's particles and gases.
Dr. Kettier, thank you for coming out. I noticed on your one slide here a picture from your Rutledge compressor station that you showed. There was a large slurry pond that looks like it was there. And I did read somewhere that this pipeline is going to be a repurposed oil pipeline to now carry natural gas. Is there issues with ground leakage that could come up even outside of these compressor stations, like in people's properties and that with these repurposed oil pipelines? And why is there a giant slurry pond there and what's that used for?
Well, the Rutledge compressor station that you're looking at, you can see at the top of the picture, you can see that impoundment where they keep frack water. And between the compressor station and the pond is a small shale gas well. So they've drilled and they've fracked there and they've used that water to do the fracking. The compressor station is merely to move the gas that's being produced from that well pad through the pipeline. So, the danger of spills, I think, is when they clean out that pipeline to allow the gas to go through. Now, if it's methane, that's going to be gas. However, if it's natural gas liquids that are going through that pipeline, like ethane, which we produce a lot of here in Southwest Pennsylvania, that's a liquid that can spill, and pipelines have been known to spill. And so that can be a real problem. But once if it's going to be just methane, and that's the other thing your community could find out is what exactly is the purpose of this pipeline that's being serviced by this compressor station? Is it to go to a natural gas power plant in your area? Is it to go to a utility that's going to distribute it to homes? Is it going to go to another state? Or is it going to be exported out of the country? I think that's important to know.
I believe it's going down to the Marcus Hook refinery down there and a naval yard.
It's getting shipped overseas, I think.
Right. So what they're going to do there is it's either going to be natural gas liquids like ethane that are going to be shipped, or it's going to be liquefied natural gas at Marcus Hook. That's a very dangerous process. They're talking about that Gibbstown facility in New Jersey to be the site of that, and that's all being exported. That's not. It has nothing to do with energy independence or anything else. It's all for export, and this is an important issue of what we're doing in Pennsylvania. We're living it here in Southwest Pennsylvania. You're starting to live it with a single piece of infrastructure that's considerable in my view, but This is a big issue for Pennsylvania to deal with and for the country.
Dave, do you know if that's in West Rock Hill or if that's in Richland Township?
It is on the border of Richland Township and West Rock Hill. The street that runs out front of it on the other side is Richland, and it is on the West Rock Hill side of the road, is my understanding.
So if anybody, oh, I'm sorry. So if anybody wanted to go and find out more information, they might have to go to Richland Township and West Rock Hill.
More information. I'm sorry. Can you repeat it? I
Yes,
apologize.
so if people wanted to go and find out more information, like Dr. Tyre was suggesting, they would probably have to go to both West Rock Hill and Richland.
I would say they probably would want to go to both because yes. However, I think that you'll probably get more information from West Rock Hill than Richland would be my.
I think that's probably a safe bet.
Yeah.
Doesn't the state DEP have jurisdiction over most of the regulatory issues with these as well? Not too much the townships?
The DEP is the regulatory agency in charge overseeing oil and gas development in Pennsylvania. There are some federal agencies related to pipelines that may be involved as well, but the DEP is the main agency. Frankly, I'm not sure that if you're looking to get answers that are satisfactory to you, to get explanations, that you're going to get that from the current DEP. I really think you need to lean on your local elected officials, and not just the school board, but parents need to ask questions, local physicians need to ask questions, and most importantly, residents living in the vicinity who are truly going to be impacted significantly from this.
Dr. Ketyer, I really appreciate you coming on. I think that, what we take away from this is that we need to keep an eye on it. We need to continue to monitor and contact your legislators about this, because I don't like the idea. And I think that majority of our residents that I've talked to don't like that idea either. So we really appreciate you taking the time to come and give this presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. One last thing, if you have any questions, if you want to pursue this further, Southwest Pennsylvania Environmental Health Project and Physicians for Social Responsibility Pennsylvania are at your service. So thanks for the invitation. Have a great meeting. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move along and we're going to go to our first reading of the public comment. So I'm not sure
We
who's
have a
going to be
new
reading that
reader
this
tonight.
time.
We
A
have
new reader.
Eileen Finlayson is going to be our new reader.
All right, how many of those do we have this evening?
There's 4.
All right, go ahead, please read them.
The first one is from Alyssa Haring from Richland Township. My son had a runny nose with no other symptoms for 2 days last week, and I was advised by the school nurse to keep him home. I was told that he could participate in his class virtually, but he'd still be marked absent. He did participate in his Google meetings and completed all his assignments. I don't understand why he's being marked absent when he fully participated. Additionally, the email sent out from Dr. Harner this week indicated that for snow days, the students may be advised to participate virtually. Why is this okay for snow days, but not when we have to keep them home due to a runny nose? If this is the case, I imagine there will be a ton of absent days, as runny nose is so common throughout the winter. I recommend updating the district guidelines to allow live students to participate virtually and gain credit for attendance when they have to stay home sick. The next one is from Crystal West, Milford Township. Hello, thank you to you for all your efforts during this challenging time. I saw Dr. Harner's email that came out on Wednesday, November 11th, and he broke down the process of yellow alert, having virtual school on any given day if there is not enough staffing. I was wondering if you can confirm students who attend tech school will still have transportation, and to confirm what time they would get picked up on these days, because right now they get picked up at 6:45 a.m. to go to the high school first. Thank you. Next comment is from Catherine Infante, Milford Township. The latest recommendation from the state calls for schools to shift entirely to remote learning if the weekly COVID-19 incidence rate in their county is more than 100 cases per 100,000 residents, or a rate of positive COVID-19 tests is more than 10%, putting the county of Bucks in the substantial category. Our town is not an island. Checking the numbers within our zip code seems foolish, especially when the surrounding counties are also in the substantial category. With the holidays coming and the numbers rising, how can you justify sending students back 5 days a week, jeopardizing our ability, students and staff, to social distance? I'm sorry, there was 5. There's 2 more. This one is from Jessica Martin of Milford Township. If the high school day is canceled, will our tech students still be getting a bus from home to the tech school like they have been? And then the final comments is, good evening. This is from Ryan Weand, the QCA board president. In the past, this board has used low community spread as one of its reasons for claiming our schools should return to live instruction 5 days a week. At the beginning of the school year, only one county had a substantial level of community spread. However, that has quickly changed and the upward trend is frightening. As of last week, there are now 38 counties that have the highest level of community spread, designating them as substantial, including Bucks County. The QCEA membership resides in 9 different counties, and every one of those counties is currently labeled as substantial, and their community spread is increasing, as well as hospitalizations. Those staff members are traveling to and from their hotspot counties each day, working in buildings with other staff members who reside in other high community spread areas, all while this board considers moving forward with a plan that decreases social distancing, packs hallways and classrooms, increases the amount of contacts throughout a day, and increases the overall number of people in our buildings. Additionally, there continues to be an increase in building absences for COVID-related reasons, as well as a decrease in the substitute fill rate to cover those positions. Buildings are on the brink of closure because they can't be staffed. According to the state departments of both health and education, districts should be switching to a full remote learning model when their county has a substantial level of community spread, defined as 100 or more incidents per 100,000 or 10% or higher positivity rate. As of today, Bucks County's rate is more than double the incident rate at 212 per 100,000. Inconceivably, this board wants to do the complete opposite and thrust the doors wide open by sending more students back for more days. The board has a track record of not following the state recommendations and guidelines, and now this reckless trend is about to continue by switching to an ill-fated plan for our secondary schools to return live for 5 days a week as community spread numbers continue to surge. As recently as yesterday, the director of the policy lab at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia warned that, quote, while most infections of children and teachers appear to be occurring out of school, there is an increasing evidence that the virus is being transmitted in schools around the area, end quote. The policy lab director, David Rubin, explains that there may even be more in-school transmission than we know due to contact tracers not being able to keep up with the surging caseload and record high infections. So although some have been proud of a supposed lack of spread in our schools, they're also speaking of the past, when halls were emptier, our desks were further apart, and less people were in the buildings. The fact that we recently had 4 positive cases in our high school and another positive case at Poff Elementary today isn't reassuring. As I have asked previously, why does this board refuse to be proactive and not see the warning signs? Why wait until it's too late and the numbers rise even more while risking infecting our teachers, who you desperately need to provide instruction? I'm asking that you provide clarity to the staff and students of this district, as well as the community, by committing to a matrix of threshold that determines when a school should close. How high does the level of spread in our community need to be before this board will follow state guidelines regarding instructional models? At this point, does our solicitor believe our board could be seen as negligent or be held accountable for not following state guidelines and recommendations? Our staff and students' health and safety must be a priority for this board, and following the guidelines of state health officials will help prove that you truly care. I obviously don't speak for every one of my members, and I've never claimed to do so, but I promise you that the majority who I do speak for don't want to be Dr. Dambster's lab rats as we gamble with our health and safety to prove whether or not his hypothesis come true. This includes his ideas of moderate quarantines and 7-day quarantines, both of which are weaker and less protective models. How could you possibly be considering switching to one of those models at a time of surging cases? Why are we holding onto the words of one doctor when a plethora of doctors, scientists, and researchers have stated the opposite? Please do what's safest and right and pause your decision for our secondary schools to return to 5 days a week until community spread decreases to a safer number level. And that is the end of public comments.
Thank you.
Dr. Harner, could we get an explanation or an answer for that tech school busing issue if we have a closure due to staffing? That was brought up in 2 public comments here.
If we have a closure due to staffing and tech school is good, we should be able to make that work. If we have a, yes, sir. We should be able to make it work. And Miss Edwards has already told me that she was checking with Al Rosenberg at Levy Bus to see if we could have an answer before the meeting's over. Great,
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kaylin, can you hear me now?
I can. You're back.
Thank you. I won't get into it, but I'm back. Thank you.
Would you like to share a little something for Anita?
I would if I could real quickly. I remember Anita's first board meeting. I was the president of the board then when Alice Bishop retired, and Anita was, afraid that she wasn't going to do a great job. And here she turns out to be wonderful and great. So Terry, to you, if you got any nerves or butterflies, it'll get better. But Anita, best of luck to you.
All right. Great. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Glad you got your stuff together again. And we're going to go ahead and move along to our superintendent report. Some of this is read only, but Dr. Harner, take it away.
Thank you, ma'am. It is a great night because all we have is one item. We have a lot of things for you to read.
I don't believe it.
Only one item, but so this is going to be a short presentation, and it's all going to be up to you and how long it's going to be. So it's not going to be on me so much. But the rest of the things are about read only. They're part of the requirements that we had in the superintendent goals that you all approved last summer. A lot of good reports, a lot of great information. They'll be up on the website, but we wanted to put it out there tonight as you have come to expect from us. But I would like to get into our presentation, so my words are be short. Miss Edwards, you're up.
Okay, Mr. Kuzo, if you can pull up the presentation. Okay. This is just an update primarily on issues that are more related to health and safety. And I know Dr. Harner is counting on me to move through relatively quickly so that, the superintendent's report is not too long. So, we will go through this information with alacrity. This is the same chart that we've been showing at each meeting that shows the PDE guidance and where our county falls. As a couple of the public commenters noted, Bucks has moved as a whole county has moved to the substantial level. PDE updates the data weekly. The recommendation is you look at where you are over a couple of weeks and not just a single week. So we will learn tomorrow whether there's a second week of substantial case metrics. One of the challenges in Bucks County is there's a pretty big difference between the lower county and the upper county in terms of the level of transmission. So that while the county as a whole is substantial, the upper Bucks area is not experiencing anywhere near the level of cases and such as the lower part of the county is. So, okay, Joe, we can move on. All right, we are posting this information on the website on a weekly basis. There's a table and then there's also a chart that just shows the quarantining data. This is for staff. As you can see, the blue piece at the bottom is the actual positive cases. It's remained very low. And if we go to the next slide for students, you will see pretty much the same pattern. We are experiencing a kind of concerning uptick this week. So I'm hoping that that is a blip and does not become a trend. But just in the last couple days, we have had more cases than we have had previously. Okay, so that's our student data. And again, each week that chart is updated and it's on the website. This is a chart you've seen before. I just like to remind the public and also have it out there as a resource, the way that we, what we do when there is a positive case. Okay, then this is what happens when there's positive cases. And this is a chart that you've also seen before. I want to use an actual situation to kind of explain the thought process that goes into what we do as we're notified of cases. Yesterday, the high school had to send out four notification letters about 4 different cases that we were advised of. But then you have to do a little more analysis. So when we looked at it more closely, one of the cases had not been in school since October 23rd. So that was outside the 14-day window. A second one had not been in school since October 30th, which was almost out of the 14-day window. And the 2 cases that were more recent, there were no points of commonality and there were positive household members in each of those cases. So when you actually looked at the information, the standard there is 2 to 4 students. And while there were 2, there were no commonalities. And therefore, as I think Dr. Harner shared with you last night, the recommendation was not to take any further action. So we are following these guidelines, but we're also using common sense, and being notified of 4 cases on the same day is not the same thing necessarily as having 4 cases at the same time. So that's just kind of an example of the thought process that we go through to try to determine what the appropriate next step is within the guidelines. Okay. There's a lot of, I want to say, concern around the contact tracing process. We're getting, when we get to concerns a little later, we get a lot of notifications that are really late. We also submit contact tracing, like information to support that process, and then people in the community are reporting that they're not being contacted. So I think there is an overwhelming amount of work that the health department is trying to do with all this contact tracing, and I do have some concerns that we're not keeping up. So what we do when we're notified of a case, we determine all of the people from within the school environment who might be close contacts. So we look at what's the last day the person attended school, attended live school. If it's a secondary student, are they an A student or a B student in terms of their hybrid attendance? We look at classrooms. Every classroom has a seating chart. Most buildings use some kind of sign in and sign out room sheet, so that as specialists or people go in and out of the classroom to provide services to students. We have a record of who was in a classroom on a given day. So we're able to use that data to develop who might be a close contact of the individual that was reported to us as positive. We do the same thing with transportation. If it was a student that used our bus transportation, the buses, we'll talk about this a little while later as a concern, but the buses are to have assigned seating and seating charts so that it's very easy to limit the number of people that are a close contact. So we have to look at that. And then we have to look at whether if it's a student, well, I guess even if it's an adult, are they involved in any extracurricular activities? And where might there be close contacts in relation to that? Then we send our potential close contact letter to let people know that they're going to be contacted by the Bucks County Department of Health for contact tracing. And we send that also like to encourage them to cooperate with that process because that's a key way that will help stop the spread. So our nurses end up doing the vast majority of this work, and they are doing heroic work to keep track of everything and make good decisions in all of these different circumstances. And the letters come from principals, and so certainly our administrators are supporting this process, but a lot of it really falls on our nurses. So what's going well? While there is some COVID fatigue, we are continuing to see a high level of compliance with the health and safety protocols. So that's a good thing because it's helping keep people safe and helping us keep schools open. So far, we do not see any evidence of spread occurring in our schools. I think the measures that we're taking and the way we're approaching it is contributing to that. So that's good news. All of the elementary students came back last month, and we did not experience any discernible change in the fact that we have a safe school environment. So that's good news. For the most part, parents, families have been incredibly cooperative, understanding with the requirements, and we're seeing a high degree of all of that. Not 100%, but overall. And our nurses have sent some reminders home recently, to try to reinforce the importance of all of the health and safety protocols. And Joe's just playing with me now. Okay. And the last one I wanted to mention, I know it's a little thing, okay, and not a huge thing, but every principal that I've talked to since we changed the requirements around recess and expanded the use of playground equipment and all of that has reported that students were so excited and like that was the highlight of their day, and that it just really had a positive impact on the culture and community within the school. So it might seem like a little thing, but the changes you approved regarding recess and playground equipment last time, our students really enjoyed. So that's also a plus. All right, now we'll get to what's not going well and what we're doing about it. I'll wait on staffing because the next slide has a chart for that. So I'm just gonna kind of wait a minute to talk about that one. One issue we are having is with the assigned seating on buses. And that's partly a Levy issue and partly a student issue. So all buses have assigned seating. Sometimes kids aren't sitting where they're supposed to sit. And sometimes bus referrals are not being written for students who are ignoring the requirements. And this was, we had a situation just in the last day that caused us to circle back with levies and make sure that the requirements are clear. What happens when students don't sit in their assigned seats, when there is a positive case that rode a bus, it is impossible to determine who a close contact might be. especially with elementary, where more children are now in live school and there are more children on buses, we really want to limit the students that qualify as a close contact. And you can't do that if you have no idea who is sitting where. So in the situation today, the principal was actually able to use the camera on the bus to figure it out. But that is not how this is supposed to work. So we have reiterated that we expect every bus to have its assigned seating and the drivers to enforce it and to write bus referrals if a student doesn't comply. And with one warning, a student who won't comply will then have a week-long bus suspension to see if that gets the message across, and then we'll try again. So it's really important to avoid disruption for a whole bus. So that's an area that we're still not seeing what we need to see, and that's what we're doing about it. I had mentioned we are seeing some significant delays in some of the notifications. One example of an individual who was quarantined, they notified us back on October 29th and did the right thing. We finally got the Department of Health notification, I want to say on November 10th. So that kind of delay makes it pretty useless. So if the person had not reported it, we wouldn't have known. So I recognize some of the difficulties they're operating under. I'm not trying to be critical, but notifications that are 2 weeks after the fact really are not helpful in maintaining safety in our schools. So we do utilize that internal information that I talked about, that we gather to give to the Department of Health to support contact tracing. We do use that to make quarantine decisions prior to formal notifications. And given the length of time some of the notifications take, I think that's a wise thing to continue. And then I think every school district struggles with different data from different sources, says different things. People use different measures. Is it by case onset date? Is it by case reporting date? Is it the state data? Is it the county data? So that it does create a challenge. Like, I think we're doing well at making good decisions, but when the data isn't consistent, that does create a challenge for us. And then the last piece there has to do with the staffing levels. And this is a chart that you can go to the chart, Joe, it's fine. A chart that Zach and Barb in HR put together to start to illustrate why we're having some concerns about staffing levels. And so you can see that the number of substitutes needed on a daily basis is increasing faster than the number of subs that are accepting jobs. And that's despite significant recruitment efforts to add to the sub pool and things like that. So staffing has two components to it. One has to do with obviously the quality of instruction. A student is always going to get their best instruction from the regular teacher. So there's an impact on instruction when we don't have enough substitutes. But in this environment, the other issue is that a concern that we may not have enough adults to safely supervise students during the school day. And so that is an ongoing concern. So some of the things that we've done, we took some actions to discourage holiday travel because of the quarantine requirements, and we really need all our teachers to come back to be able to come back to work right after the Thanksgiving break. And principals are using an incredible variety of creative strategies within the building in order to have enough adult supervision. And that includes everything from the principal teaching classes to using all kinds of auxiliary personnel, to using aides to supervise classes where the teacher is teleworking. And so they're really, exhausting every option that they can come up with to make sure that we have enough adults. Okay, go ahead, Joe. All right, so looking ahead, there is a potential for limited closures related to cases. And the most likely trigger of the three is what I listed there. And I did explain the high school case, which I do not think fell into that category, but that does remain a concern. And I explained the process we use of it's not just the number, but it's also what kind of connections we see between cases. More likely is the potential for limited closures that are staffing related. And so what we did, we do not want to be notifying parents, early in the morning without any kind of warning that a particular building does not have enough adults to open that day. And so we created a little warning system, which you can think about it like the National Weather Service putting out a winter storm warning. Principals are getting a report each night at about 8 o'clock of their absences and unfilled positions for the next day. They will analyze that report. They will be able to figure out based on who's out and how many are out, because it's not just a number, it's also which positions need to be filled. And they'll be able to see whether they think that they are right on the edge and there's a high likelihood there's not going to be enough adults to provide supervision the next day. If they believe that's the case, they will send out a yellow alert message to parents so that parents have some warning the night before, and also notify cabinet and notify leavies. And then in the morning, when they get their updated report, which may be better and may be worse, meaning that more substitutes may have logged in and taken some of the open jobs, but also more people may have gotten up and they're sick that day, or their child is sick or something like that. And so more people may have to call out. So it could go both ways. And then the principal will touch base with Dr. Harner early in the morning. And if there is not enough adults to safely open school, then Dr. Harner will send a message closing that building and having it switched to virtual for that one day. So I don't know if we will have to use that system, and I don't know at what point, but we did want to have something in place so that we're at least trying to give parents some warning that, hey, tomorrow morning, pay attention for a message because we're right on the edge here. And we have had buildings right on the edge a few days, but we've been able to work it out. And then there's other factors, obviously, that are beyond our control. If other counties make decisions that close down their schools for some reason, and many of our teachers live in that county, that will definitely have an impact on our ability to have enough adults to open. And PDE, obviously in the Department of Health, PA Department of Health guidance will continue to evolve as situations change. So we have to be able to react to all those changes that are kind of beyond our control. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we are and kind of the planning we have put in place to try to mitigate the impact of any closures that are needed. And that's it. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from the group? I think this was a really great presentation. Excuse me. I think that this is some positive news for a change. And it really goes to show that our health and safety plan that we're utilizing is working. And we know that this has not been easy. I know that teachers have been working super hard. We have people covering classrooms that need substitutes because we don't have enough substitutes. And so everyone is really putting in a lot of work to make this happen. So I think the biggest takeaway for me is we've been open. What is this, week 8? Is this week 8? Yes. We've had no in-school spread, and our success is defined on not the cases that are occurring outside of school, but whether or not we are seeing any in-school spread. So appreciate the information. Thank you so much, Nancy. I'll go ahead and move along to our standing committee reports. I'll start with Mrs. Weed, if you want to discuss policy.
We did not have a meeting, so there's nothing to discuss.
Well, that's easy. That makes it easy. All right, finance, Mr. Makuchi. Oh,
you're muted, Keith.
That's perfect. And we're done. So we had a very brief meeting. Let me just get to the notes section here. I took a couple of notes. We talked really the big discussion and something that we're going to consider. And Zach, should we talk about the tax collector compensation manual now, or do you want to wait on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth in your report, just kind of touching on what we talked about.
Yeah.
And I'll put it on later.
So it's mandatory that we accept the tax collector manual, which is essentially a document that directs the board as far as how we compensate the tax collectors in our region. And they're paid by parcel, just to give everybody kind of an understanding. So it's generally 4 years. The last time, I guess this was renewed sometime prior to like 2018, I believe. So it's up. We'll have to vote on it in January. And the tax collectors are asking for a 10-cent increase in per parcel moving forward. So Zach, what's that exact number? The increase that it would cost us?
So based on parcels,
yeah,
about $20,000 over 4 years. And then they also asked for some stipends. So a total would be maybe $28,000 divided over 4 years.
Yeah, so it's not a significant amount of money. It's something that we'll have to consider. If you want to read more about it, under the agenda for the finance committee, there's a document there I suggest you read. We also talked about some of the challenges. Zach gave us an update on our monthly revenue and expenditure analysis of the forecast, and we're looking fairly positive. But there are a couple issues that have presented themselves, specifically around our charter school enrollments, as well as our food service budget. And so the food service budget projection is, if we continue on track as it is today, that we could be in a deficit of somewhere in the neighborhood of greater than 400,000. So that's money that's going to have to be paid to that line item.
Can you say that amount again? Is that?
I think it's north of 400,000.
Oh, I thought I heard that incorrectly.
Yeah, that's correct. It could be around $450,000.
Yeah.
Is that all labor, or because we're giving away meals and we're not taking money?
It's due to the fact that we're not selling as many meals as we typically would. So we're simply not covering our costs. So we're not covering our labor costs, our management costs, the administrative fee for Chartwell's, equipment costs, those types of things.
We're getting reimbursed on, Dave, the meals that we're giving for free.
Correct, but we're not giving away enough meals, so.
Take the meals, people. Let's have a campaign.
So that could be something that we're going to keep our eye out on. He's just updating us, month over month as we went along. other big ticket items are our charter schools. And so our projected enrollment has increased. And from what we budgeted. And Zach, am I correct when we say we projected enrollment somewhere at about $1.5 million if it continues on this trend over the course of the year?
Over budget, yeah.
Over budget, correct.
Yeah, we've historically had a very level enrollment, and obviously we've seen a spike this year that is not accounted for in our budget.
So another burden on the budget that we have to consider. Again, that number could be fluid depending on what we do. Folks can come back. That's paid monthly, just for everybody's information. And then we talked a little bit about the NIDIC renovation and the leftover capital expenditure. And so initially that was somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.6 million. After an analysis was completed, it could be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.9 million. And again, just to reiterate, that's capital expenditures. So there was some discussion at the Finance Committee specifically regarding, how we spend that money, and some recommendations that maybe we consider as a board not spending all of it, pending the outcome of the redistricting committee. So if there's changes that are going to need to be made that are not right now, we can't borrow any more money for this year. We'd have to wait until the following year or 2020. Is it 2021 or 22? Zach?
January 22 is when we would want to borrow again to capture better rates.
Yeah, so we would have to wait to borrow money. So if in the redistricting committee, there's any discussions about modifications and renovations of buildings, we won't be able to get any cash on hand until the calendar year 2022. So something to consider as you're moving forward, and whether or not we want to continue with spending all of it on capital improvement projects. That's basically all I have here. Jack, did I miss anything? Any of my finance people? Group, John? No? Okay.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to facilities, Mr. Spear.
Thank you. I have a much rosier report than Keith's. It's a lot of good news coming out of the facilities right now. The NIDIG renovation is still moving ahead. There's still some minor punch list materials or minor punch list items that need to be finished. The cafeteria and the very front foyer with the large learning staircase is still yet to be finished, but it is moving along really nicely. And I did speak, it's at the end of my report here, but I did speak about maybe possibly scheduling a tour for us school board members to go see it some evening once it's all finished. If everyone would like to do that, that's something I think we should probably do, since we've been putting so much into this. At least we can see what we're getting out. But also Mr. Spadafora, who wanted us to thank the borough, who has been very easy to work with throughout this whole process. And I would like to thank the borough as well on behalf of the board, because without them getting their inspections in on time, we wouldn't have been able to get into this school as quickly as we did. The other thing Keith touched on was the money we had left from our contingency fund for that project largely did not get used. And it looks like we may have up to about $1.9 million that can be used. That can be used for our capital projects that we have coming up. And I believe it will be used in next year's budget for parking lot repaving and POF, vestibule pass-through windows at Richland Elementary, and another one at Trumbowersville, as well as a new emergency generator and fire alarm system and surveillance systems at our facilities building. So that money is going to get to be used, and it's money that won't come out of our general funds for next year. So that's going to save us in our next year's budget. The last issue I wanted to speak about was the front parking lot on Park Avenue in front of the high school. We had received a letter from a business owner located on Fifth Street across from the parking lot. That business owner has a concern that water running off of the parking lot was flooding his business. With direction from the school board, that would be us, Dewey Engineer visited the site to investigate these claims, and Dewey Engineering then reached out to Terraform Engineering, who was the one that initially did the project. And they concluded that the bottom line is that the parking lot is doing what it's supposed to do, and that it is functioning as though it was designed, and that we believe that the school district is not considerably contributing to the flooding along Fifth Street. So we recommended that that the district send a letter to the business, that we made every good effort to alleviate this that we possibly can. And I believe that's about it, right, Zach? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Quick question. There was a question that someone was saying that they pick up meals for 2 children in the district. Can they pick up meals for anyone, any child, or is it only limited to the kids in our district? Because I know that was something that we changed over the summer.
Those were summer rules. I believe at this point it only can be kids that are our students, but I'll confirm that with Pete Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you for your report, Mr. Spear. Going to move on to the Education and Curriculum Committee, Mr. Klein.
I'll step in.
Okay.
Grab my notes.
Where are you today, Mr. Kern? Your background.
Oh.
Moskva.
No, Bangkok.
It's changing.
It's Bangkok. So there was a new Spanish in the workplace course recommended, and that's to enhance, you know, if you can have like conversational, you can do stuff for, like I learned tourist Spanish, but this is for Spanish in the workplace and things like that. So it's a new offering that the Dr. Hoffman and crew were discussing. And there was an update to the program of studies with a lovely document that highlighted the differences that were going on. And I'm not going to try to repeat what's in there, but they're doing their usual wonderful work. And I will say I don't think they asked for any money, right, Dr. Hoffman? Yeah, so, and there was just a little bit on, I guess, the budget preview and all enrollment and staffing stuff. Anything else that I should highlight? It seemed pretty straightforward. Dr. Hoffman.
No, I'll just add that we will bring the final presentation for a board vote at the next meeting. So if you have any questions, if you look over the changes, you can feel free to reach out to me between now and then, and appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Mr. Jackson, legislative.
I really don't have a legislative report. That's usually tied to the IU, and we haven't met IU recently, but I will say that I heard there was an election recently and a lot of people voted. Other than that, I don't know anything for certain.
I'm going to try not to read into that.
No one paid attention to the election. Nobody.
That's right.
All right. I'm going to move on. Mr. Akmanowitz, tech school.
In regards to the Upper Bucks County Technical School, I have no report other than the next Upper Bucks County Technical School meeting will be next Thursday. Unless Chris, of course, if you have anything you'd like to add.
I would like to add something, but not related to the tech school.
No, then save it for open comment.
No, I mean, as a sort of a committee report, I would just like to mention that the redistricting committee continues to meet on most Wednesdays, and that they are open to the public, and that the public should look into attending some of these meetings. And at this week's meeting, you missed Dr. Light came in and gave a really long presentation of the history of QE and the history of the district in general, and it was really interesting. And you know, there's a lot going on in that committee, and it is worth listening into.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding us of that.
It's like a bonus committee report.
We'll have the co-chairs come and present at the next meeting, an update.
Very good. All right, I'm gonna quickly just discuss a few items for my president's report. So some things that I think that are, and we've talked about this evening, some things that are really positive information. And I realize that there's a lot of anxiety with cases that are increasing across the country. I think that almost every single state in the country that we're seeing an increase in cases. And so the immediate response to a lot of people is probably, you know, schools, we have to address that. But here's some positive news just to keep things in perspective. This is via Dr. Damsker. So there's no existing evidence anywhere indicating that in-person schooling contributes to the spread in the community. Likewise, there's no evidence that closures alone will slow the spread in the community. When a school's health and safety plan is followed, we have not seen any evidence of in-school spread. That's not just Quakertown, that's the entire county. And that's for students and staff. And that doesn't mean that it's never going to happen, but it does mean that our school district health and safety plans are extremely effective. More than 450 children and staff have been quarantined from close exposures with no positive cases resulting from those exposures. Cases brought to school have been traced to exposures from outside of the school. Most commonly, we're seeing those in household contacts and social gatherings, situations where people are not masking appropriately, not distancing, and so on. These exposures will continue to occur regardless of a school status. I think this was probably the most interesting and yet surprising and made me pause. Almost 40% of the cases that occurred in students were and staff, almost 40% of our cases have occurred in students and staff that were in full virtual mode at the time of infection. So less controlled environment, remember, can equate to more exposure to the virus. We've had more than 1,200 cases in Bucks County. Children with only mild disease so far, none have been hospitalized or severely ill. And that's not impossible to occur, but the numbers do indicate that it's very rare. So I just thought I would share some additional positive news. And with that, I'm going to move on to the items for board action. We have on the agenda designation of agent of resolution for FEMA grant fund. So I'll need a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
And just for Terry's, for helping her, keeping her sane as she's transitioning. If everyone could just say your name after that motion, that'll probably help her, right, Terry? I'm gonna guess. Yeah.
I think that was me that made the motion and
Okay.
Jenny that seconded.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Discussion on that.
Mr. Spear still didn't say his name.
Mr. Spear and Mrs. Weed, right?
Got it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, board officers, I'll need a motion to accept the resignation of board secretary, Mrs. Anita Caseman, or Ms. Anita Caseman, sorry. Why do women have to deal with all these different Miss, Mrs., Ms.? We just have one.
I'd like to table the issue.
If we vote no, that means that means Anita has to stay.
Can't, we're not going to let you leave. And then the appointment would, the next item is the appointment of Terry San Angelo as board secretary. So I will need a motion on those, as sad as it is to do. But we're happy to have you, Terry.
Go ahead, Dave.
So moved, Mr. Achmanowitz.
Second, Mr. Jackson.
Discussion.
Don't leave, Terry. Don't leave Anita. I'm sorry. Don't leave Anita.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed?
Oh.
All right, the motion-
I think all of us are really opposed, but we won't say that.
Congratulations, Anita.
Congratulations, Terry.
And
Yes,
congratulations.
yes, you're here.
The motion carries unanimously. All right, our fiscal agenda. We have on this agenda the approval of the 2021-2022 Act 1 budget opt-out resolution as presented. And this is going to be a roll call vote. So I'll read out the whole item here. The resolved that the Board of School Directors of Quakertown Community School District makes the following unconditional certifications. The school district's various tax levies and other revenue sources will be sufficient to balance the school district's final budget for the next fiscal year based on maintaining current tax rates or increasing tax rates by an amount less than or equal to the Act 1 index. And the index, if people are curious about that, this year is 3.5%. And the school board has to date and in the future will comply with the rules set forth in the school code for the adoption of the proposed final budget. So in summary, this is just an opt-out resolution of any additional, what's the word I'm looking for? Exceptions.
Exceptions. Yeah, we won't go above Act 1 index is what this says.
Thank you.
Right.
So I'll need a motion on that and then we'll do a roll call vote.
Motion.
I'll motion it.
Mr. Reimers.
All right, Mr. Reimers,
You wanna do
second.
this?
Oh, we don't qualify. So who's the second?
Makuchi.
All right. We don't qualify for any exceptions this year, just to make it simple for everybody. Any other discussion on this? All right, Terry, I'll go ahead and let you do the roll call.
And just clarify what we're voting yes on and what we're voting no on.
Yes.
The motion to vote on Act 1 budget opt-out resolution for 21-22. Mr. Reimers,
Yes.
Mr. Spear,
Yes.
Mr. Klein,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Kern,
Yes.
Mr. Mikucci,
Yes.
Mr. Akmanowitz,
Yes.
Ms. Weed,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes.
The motion is unanimous.
Thank you. Moving on to the fiscal consent agenda. We have the Forecast 5 license agreement, approval of Sweet Stevens Katz and Williams for legal services. We have some budget transfers, October 2020, and approval of October 2020 bills list, as well as the approval of 2020-2021 Levy bus routes. Need a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Klein.
I'll second Mr. Spear.
Discussion.
One discussion. Somebody else go ahead first.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that the Levy bus routes are these going to be the new bus routes for next week's changes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there, in approving these bus routes, Zach, does it have any effect should the contract not go to Levy next year? The fact that we're approving Levy's bus routes, so to speak.
I'm seeing Mr. Garten shake his head no.
All routes are our routes. So we just say Levy because that's, everybody knows that's our transportation company, but they are our routes. We own those routes.
Very good.
You like copyright routes? I don't understand.
So if we needed to extract them out of their system, they would have to provide them to us.
We wouldn't have to recreate it. I got it.
Any other discussion?
What's
But
the
with
net worth of a
redistricting,
route?
oh, go ahead, Keith.
I just wanted to know what the net worth of a route was.
With redistricting, I'm sure that the routes are going to be all turned upside down and rewritten anyway for next year. So
It's true. It's ever changing. All right, let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the Human Resources Consent Agenda. On that agenda, we have the Act 93 agreement. And just so everyone is aware, that is an information item that we did receive previously on a proposed 2-year agreement between the district and Act 93 administrative group. And we also have on that agenda professional staff, supervisory technology staff, support staff, as well as unit pay. I'll need a motion to approve those items.
So moved.
I'll second Mr. Reimers.
Who initiated that?
It was a tie, 2 of us. I was one, Steve Klein.
We'll go with Mr.
Fingers.
Klein and Mr. Reimers. Discussion on those? All those in favor say aye.
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 Or anyone opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. Next is the Policy and Programs Consent Agenda. We have the approval of a contract between Lakeside Youth Service and Quakertown Community School District. I'll need a motion.
Mr. Jackson will make the motion.
All right, Mr. Akmanowitz will second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving along to our information items here. There's some information about the NIDIG monthly additions and renovations update from Dewey Engineering. There's enrollment counts information, high school out of school suspension report. And then did we get any new public comments?
If you get to stay home from school, is it a punishment?
You know,
Only on a snow day.
I've had that conversation too, Dave.
We
Did you
did
already
not get any more public comments.
Did you already do new business or?
Not yet.
am I- Okay, keep going.
You don't get to do any new business, Ron.
Good.
I'm kidding. All right, new business.
Oh, we're there now. Okay.
Go for
I
it.
want to, let me pop on here so everybody can see me. I want to just raise one issue that was touched on a lot of times already today, and it's the issue of going back to school full-time live. I know we're all in favor of it. We're all for it for a number of reasons, but I want to throw it out there. When Caitlin and I talked a couple months ago, well, a month ago, about going back live, we threw out some target dates that gave the administration some time to make things happen. We were saying send the middle school back after Thanksgiving, send the high school back in the new year. And we felt that would give the administration time to get everything organized and get everything on board in this smooth manner without any hiccups. The administration did a great job coming back with a date of May 18th, that's next Wednesday, saying that they can make everything happen by that date. We were all bored. I think we still are very ecstatic date. I want to know if any of the board members have reservations with the current COVID increase about meeting that date. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. I don't want anybody to think they can't express concerns, and I want to know if anybody has any.
I'll go on stack first.
Go ahead, Dave.
So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you asked. Thanks for bringing it up. I think it was kind of all on all our minds. We're all watching these numbers and we're all going up and it's happening all over. And I think we need to be diligent, and I think we need to, be able to act fast. If we need to call together a meeting or an executive committee session, I think we all need to kind of know that we're on call for a meeting. And if something was to happen, we need to know that we need to change our minds. And so, I think we need to, as a board, we need to walk that line together and be conscious and monitor it.
Well put, David. I don't think any of us wouldn't be human if we weren't concerned about this. And as has been the case through much of this, even today, I'm reading an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and it's coming from both sides of the issue. The state is saying they're considering closing schools for 2 weeks, and in the article they quoted Dr. Damsker saying that no, don't do that. And then there was a comment made, I forget when, that the kids might be in the safest place in the schools because we're doing all the right things. We have the masks in place and the hand washing, and everybody's aware of what they need to do. So like David said, I agree. I think if we see something different begin to happen, as long as we react quickly and do the right thing at the time, I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've probably been the most vocal about my concerns throughout this whole thing. But one of the things that I really pushed for and was encouraged by was the fact that we had a health and safety plan that gave us flexibility to do, as David's saying, make a decision and do it quickly. So the fact that, we're coming up into this, whatever this is going to be over the next couple of weeks, concerns the hell out of me. But the fact that we have the ability to do that gives me hope.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, it's a challenge because it's the unknown, right? We don't know the future. We don't know one way or the other is better or worse. It's all conjecture. You can't know the future. So I think what we have in place, the trust but verify model, the continued monitoring. And if folks really double down and continue to follow the safety protocols and do the best we can. And the other thing that always chews at me is it's like the COVID gets all the attention, but what about all the collateral damage? There aren't any numbers saying how much ill effects are happening for not being in school and not being in a safer place and all kinds of side effects that unfortunately don't have so much airtime and don't get the same shake. So I think soldier on and do our best and monitor and see what happens.
I echo what everybody else has said, and I would really encourage the community to follow the CDC COVID guidelines. I can give a couple examples. I was in Target the other day, and there were people walking around there with no mask. And I'm sorry, at this point, I know I feel like I'm Ms. Mask, but it's pretty much every doctor and every expert in the healthcare field says you got to wear a mask. So there's just no excuse to be out there without them. And I would encourage the community to do that. And we have not had any transmission in the schools. So I think our healthcare plan is working.
I agree with what Jenny said, that I believe our following of our health and safety plan, as we've been doing well so far, we need to continue to do better. When us parents are at home and our children do have any symptoms, we do need to stay on top of that, and we need to keep them home. That's the only way we're going to stay. That's the only way we're going to be able to stay open, frankly. I mean, the one good thing about our area is if you look at a map of the COVID cases around this area, we are like an island of low cases. And we even have a fairly large outbreak at one of our nursing homes in this community. And we are still much lower than all of our surrounding areas. And I'm attributing this to the fact that the kids are in school and the people in these communities, the Quakertown, Penn Ridge, Palisades area, you know, there's more kids in school in this area than there is in any of our other surrounding communities. You know, I live in Milford Township. Milford Township borders Pennsburg. Pennsburg has 106 cases. Milford Township has 13 right now. Why is that? Their kids are on virtual right now. Our kids are in school. Our kids are being protected. Our teachers are being protected in the schools. I believe that it's up to us as parents, it's up to the students, and it's up to the teachers to make sure that when they do show symptoms, they report those, and that we keep on top of this. It is an inconvenience. I know now, you know, if my kid has a stuffy nose, I don't want to keep her home. I don't want to then keep my other daughter home if my one had a fever, but that's what we're doing. And it's not easy, but we're doing it, and we're doing a great job. And I believe if we keep doing this great job, we will be able to open our schools up to 5 days without any increases in cases. Or even if there are increases in cases, we will be able to keep it under control and be able to stay open and keep our buildings safe.
My biggest fear is that we go back to school live and there is an outbreak and we have to suddenly reverse course. And it's the disruption of a bunch of families who are, you know, we geared up for hybrid, and now we're going to gear them up for 5 days live, which we all want. And then if something happens, are we forced to revert back to hybrid, or would we be forced to go to all virtual? I'm not sure how fast the administration would react, what they could do. I guess my question is, does anybody out there have a stomach for delaying the 5 days a week until the new year?
No.
Or are we all, I'm asking the question, or are we all on board with going back next week, Wednesday?
I haven't had a chance to respond. Killing me, Ron.
I'm throwing it out there for discussion. That's
Keith hasn't responded
Let's hear what
either.
Kaylin, let's hear what everyone else has to say before we move on to that very good topic.
Well, I haven't had a chance to talk yet. Keith,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you.
That's what he just
Go
said.
ahead.
Oh, you're trying to help me out. All right, Dave.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, first of all, Ron, you're killing me, Ron, because you don't believe in this and yet you're pushing it as an agenda item. You're killing me. I love you, but you're killing me. We know that the data supports that our kids are safest in schools. If that was not the case, then we wouldn't see the data that supports that 40% of all the cases are happening to situations where kids are not masking. They're in, they're in full virtual environments. So whether or not maybe people feel that they think that being in school is an environment that is not safe, they might have that perception, but the reality is that the data doesn't support that. And from an academic perspective, from an emotional perspective, from a safety perspective, from COVID, that the data is proving that our health and safety plan is working, that the kids are in a safe environment. And I think that if we were to delay having the kids go back 5 days a week, we're only going to be delaying the inevitable of having this conversation yet again at the beginning of the year, where we're going to be discussing the same exact thing and there's not going to be very much change. If we are seeing that the administration is doing an excellent job of saying, look, if you have symptoms, and our nurses, by the way, kudos to all of our nurses, they're phenomenal. If you have symptoms, if you're in close contact, if we're following the health and safety plan, we should not see these outbreaks. But if we do, we're prepared to shut the schools down. But we haven't seen that. So I don't know why we'd even be discussing on going backwards from what our plan is.
Just one point, the charts that Nancy Ann showed for the COVID cases, if you look at when K-12 went back full time and maybe give it some form of a lag, it's hard to see a necessary correlation to an uptick or something like that. So, but that's just it. Trust but verify. We don't know the future, Ron, but we're going to keep monitoring it and measure.
Keith, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I want to make sure to get to Keith.
Yeah, no, listen, I think it's a great question. And, we made this decision, several weeks ago when the numbers were lower, and we're all watching them climb. I'm living it more and more every day again. And when in healthcare, we look at things called risks versus benefits. And when we talk about that in this context, we're talking about physical health and what I would argue completely neglecting mental health, which are two vital components of people's well-being. In addition, what we're seeing in my opinion in society is that the school districts are sort of shouldering the burden of this community spread, and everybody's sort of pointing to schools as being the catalyst when in reality, Nancy Ann said earlier in her presentation that that's not happening. Dr. Demsker, who's got thousands and thousands and thousands of cases that he's personally traced in our county, the data doesn't get any granular than that, in which we're basing our decision off of. I completely and wholeheartedly disagree with the quote, teachers are lab rats. That is extremely disheartening to hear anybody echo those words. I say we're dealt the cards we're dealt. We're trying to make the best decisions with the cards we're dealt. It's not an easy decision, but neither is recognizing that there's a group of students that are struggling. We cannot forget the last presentation we heard last board meeting, the highest failure rates in all grade levels in the history of Quakertown. We have low AP scores from last year, from the last 3 months. These are our top tier kids. We have to ask ourselves, what's the risk? What's the benefit? And how do we balance that? And I think we're doing the best we can with the cards we have today. We have to be ready to change course, but this is simple. This is about masks, cleaning your hands, and trying your best to stay away from people. And if you're sick, stay home. I commend our administration and Nancy, and that was a wonderful presentation you gave earlier on constantly looking at the health and safety plan. And I will continue to monitor the situation to the best that we can. And if we're dealt new numbers and things are concerning, I'll be the first to be on any kind of meeting at any time of day or night to help try to support change. It's just my opinion.
I'd like to build off what Keith just said. If you're sick, stay home. And, at this point, everybody had a moment to talk. And I think the real big thing on my mind, like this whole time, has been, since I heard it, which is the best point, we told a kid to stay home because it's what's best for everybody. He wants to tune into his class and we're not going to give him credit. We're going to mark him out absent. That kind of actually bothers me in a way. And
I don't think that's true. I mean, not for that particular case. I just meant as their standard protocol. I just want to be clear. Our standard protocol is that if a kid is quarantining, because by the way, full disclosure, my own kid had a cough last week. And so I called the nurse. We had to get him COVID tested. My other son had to stay home and we had to wait until he was symptom free and had the test results negative. And so they participated from home and they did get credit for that work. And Dr. Harner, am I incorrect in that statement?
I believe you are very correct. And I'll follow up on that, Mr.
Please.
Akmanowicz.
Right, because we need to be harvesting people, like the culture of people wanting to participate and help. I mean, these people who are going to think they're going to miss 12 days of school or need to get a doctor's note that's really inconvenient because it's another day out of school, like they're going to just come to school, and they're going to be sick. And we got to make them know it's okay, that we're going to meet them halfway. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, that's why we allowed people, that's why we didn't opt to do the dedicated virtual teachers, because we knew that the kids were going to have to quarantine at times so that they can have flexibility to go between their teacher and then go fully virtual, and they would still be able to have continuity in their education. So.
And I did want to speak to if there would be a closure, at least the way the PDE would list it, if there were, a small number, and I don't believe we're following that number to a T, because, you know, our schools are insanely different sizes. You know, the high school is going to have 1,200 some kids in it, possibly. You know, there could be 3 different students that never would have crossed paths during that day. They could have all been in that school building at one time positive, that may never, well, would have never infected somebody. That doesn't mean that that building needs to shut down. And if it does shut down, you know, the first step is shutting it down for 2 weeks or shutting it down for a few days is what the PDE required. But again, I believe that we have to address each case. There isn't a fixed number to say this many students that are have completely unrelated cases coming from outside and may have never even crossed paths in that building. You know, if you're saying it's 2 students, that number doesn't scientifically matter with what would maintain a safe environment in that building. So I believe, you know, before a closure were to come, they all have to be measured, but on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, Chris, I totally disagree. I mean, we have the health and safety plan. Everybody here has said that the health and safety plan is working. So we can't go cherry pick what criteria we want to use to follow that plan. You know, just because the high school is bigger and has more students, and let's say QE, if they were in the same situation because it's a smaller school, we can't just say, well, QE is smaller, let's close them, even though the criteria is the same. That's not the way you can.
I think that the purpose, I hear what you're saying though, Brian. I hear what you're saying. Like, I think there's a balance somewhere in the middle there. We cannot help what is occurring outside of our schools. We can only really help what is happening within our schools. And so if we're not seeing community spread occur within our schools, then if we're seeing 4 cases that have occurred between a couple of weeks that are non-related to each other, there needs to be some discretion. And that's where I feel that the administration has been doing a great job.
Well, and that's not necessarily my point, because we did have those 2 cases that at the high school that were back in, what was it, October or whatever dates, I don't remember offhand. And they haven't been in school now since then. Those periods have come to either they've come to the end or they're approaching the end. I don't remember exactly. So that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm saying if 2 people, even if they're in the high school, or 3 people, whatever it might be, get infected, if we have positive infections in the school, we can't just go and say, well, they may have never crossed paths. We don't know.
Well, hold on, guys. Everyone has had a chance to talk, and so I'm going to close this conversation out with this.
I still had other questions.
Well, no, but Caitlin, my question was a simple one. Does anybody have the stomach to delay the 5 days a week? The obvious consensus is no. So my questions has been answered. Is there any other new business? You know,
exactly. That's what I'm trying to get on to. And just so
Caitlin.
everyone knows, thank you, Ron. The Pennsylvania Department of Education, there was a meeting within superintendents recently, and the Pennsylvania Department of Education is also seeing that closing schools are not reducing community spread. And so it's a possibility that PDE may be changing their recommendations on, what we're seeing as far as them recommending full virtual and whatnot. But with that said, any other new business? All right, no other final public comment. I'm just going to double check that again with Terry.
I just want to mention that later on, I might bring up the air monitoring stuff later on in a future meeting.
There is one additional public comment that Mrs. Finlayson has.
Please read that.
It is from Kelly Schock, a teacher in the district. Have you heard? A vaccine is coming. I am writing to urge you to move all levels of teaching and learning in all buildings to virtual now through the new year. We can reevaluate in January of 2021. Our country is challenged again, and even our county moved from moderate to substantial. This is concerning because the holiday season is approaching, family and friends will gather, and that has the potential to wreak havoc on what we are doing here. We have a plan in place that allows for fluidity from live to hybrid to virtual. Let's use what we have created and now know how to do so well. We worked hard at all three for just this reason. Let's keep our community safe because we can still allow learning to take place. This coming from a teacher in 2 elementary school buildings who was really hesitant about returning to hybrid in September and then again to live in October. I have been pleasantly surprised at how well it is going. We are doing great things. I love being with my students. I also love the thought of keeping my family safe during the upcoming precarious months ahead. Lastly, let's not forget that all staff members, parties are low in number. Soon we will not even be able to offer coverage and schools will be closing anyway. Be proactive, act compassionately, be proud of all that has gone well in QCSD so far, and be hopeful about returning to live school in mid-January. Have you heard? A vaccine is coming.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that public comment. We are doing a great job, QCSD. We really are. So that has been, it's been tough. So I think every single last one of you, that includes board members for the time they've dedicated, our administration, our teachers, our staff, all the way around, parents, students. This has been difficult. And we're all in it together. You know, we are succeeding thus far, and we really hope that it stays that way. And if not, we'll make adjustments. So thanks for the confidence that you have with us. Dates for the board member calendars. December 3rd is going to be our next meeting, and that's also a very important meeting. It's a reorganization meeting. And we have December 10th, a policy committee meeting. And with that, I'm going to move on to needing a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved, Mr. Klein. Yeah, I beat Jackson.
Second,
too.
Mr. Akmanowitz.
All right, discussion.
No.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone
Good night,
opposed?
everybody. Wash your
Happy
hands.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Stay safe.
I'm thankful for all of you.
Here, here.
Yes. Be safe. Don't party with 100 people, people.
Please don't do it.
Wall
Don't
Wall
make
makes
it.
turkey gobblers.
Follow CDC guidelines, please.